Do you usually show up late to appointments? Do you have trouble focusing on the task at hand? Do you often act before you think things through? I'm sure all of us would say yes to these questions at times, but Saul Tucker says if all of these behaviors consistently combine, you could have ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Saul is a certified life coach who helps children and adults adapt. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, isn't ADHD things we deal with children, not adults?
Well, it's true, Lori, that the focus is generally on children. However, ADHD happens at every age. As a matter of fact, if you have ADHD, you do not outgrow it.
Oh, I always heard that too, so something to know. Tell us a little bit more about the symptoms of ADHD so we can kind of recognize what's going on.
Sure. So some of the symptoms of ADHD, people that have ADHD tend to live very much in the moment, not too much looking too far ahead or planning. And they're also not as aware of the flow of time. So these two things coupled together is why we tend to see people with ADHD often late for appointments or missing deadlines, for instance. Another of the symptoms would be that they don't have the ability to filter out all the external stimulation that's going on. So if you and I were sitting at a busy restaurant having lunch, you and I can engage in conversation and stay focused. Someone with ADHD, they're going to hear the conversation going on behind them, they're going to hear the clink of the dishes in the corner and the ringing of the phone, and they cannot make that into white noise. So it becomes very distracting and difficult for them to stay focused on the conversation at hand. Another big issue, and it can be humorous from time to time, but it can cause a lot of problems, is the impulsivity. Again, it's about filters. They just don't have the same filter system that you and I do, and they don't tend to pick up on all of the social cues that you and I might. So you might run into a friend you haven't seen for years, Lori, and the first thing out of their mouth is, "That's the blouse you chose to wear today?" You know, and we can laugh, but sometimes it can be very difficult. Yeah,
I mean, these kind of symptoms are going to make life pretty difficult, I would think.
Well, and that's true. And some things that I do like to make sure people understand about those with ADHD, there's a few things that are almost always generally true. They are very bright people, highly creative, and always well-intended. So these transgressions are by mistake. And the reaction to their actions are causing lots of frustration for them, and it has an effect on their self-esteem and confidence. They have been conditioned throughout their lives to expect that they're going to ultimately disappoint people.
Oh dear. So what are some of the steps that people can take to minimize the problem?
And that's really where we need to be. You're right on. So when we talk about the focus and the time management, I often talk about the ideal workspace for my clients. And an ideal workspace is a space for ADHD that is devoid of any distractions. So we don't want to have photos or books or even car keys, all things that could be much more interesting to me than the work I need to do. So I'll allow it to distract me.
Focus. That's the big problem.
So we also then talk about that space being sacred territory. You need to protect it. You cannot let it get infiltrated by other things. And what I mean is that I don't want you to eat or drink or take phone calls at this location. It's about conditioning them so that when they're in this space, they are going to be trained to hyper-focus and get the work done.
All right. These have been excellent tips for our viewers today. So ADHD is manageable, and working with someone who understands you can make a big difference. That's why coaching can be very productive. You see results right away. If you have questions, give Saul a call. His number's coming up next.
For more information, call Tucker Life Coaching at 216-299-0260 or click to www.tuckerlifecoaching.com. Next, tips on how to treat your teeth